Corey, you've had great success through your career as a coordinator in slowing down, stopping, running quarterbacks. And I imagine you're calling on that a little bit here as you prepare for this game.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is they add the extra guy in the run game. That's where we're just going to try to figure out, how do we take away a gap or who do we add and fit and, how we go about doing that. It's been, every defense is a little bit different and every style of offense we see is a little bit different. So that's kind of what we're going through right now, seeing different pitchers. And we're going to make sure we take the quarterback run game away this week. So.
You mentioned last week just setting the edge was a point of emphasis. How do you feel like that went in this recent game?
I thought we had guys do a better job with it. And then I thought at certain situations, I thought that's where the bigger plays got out of us. I thought it was one time, to the boundary, they were in like a cluster or a bunch to the boundary. We didn't do a good job setting it once or twice. And, it was kind of on linebackers a couple of times this weekend. We got to do a better job with our hands. We got to, knock it back, and we got to be able to put it back inside to where our help was or our support on those specific calls. But I thought going from game 1 to game 2, I thought we did a better job using our hands. Not getting washed up the field and kind of setting a firmer edge. I thought they gave us a couple different looks this week that, those are things that we've addressed already in practice and we'll continue to address this week and make sure that we're a little bit more sound in those situations this week.
Corey, what would you make of them passing 14 to 17, so high completion percent, not a lot of yards? I know it's a quick passing game. Was there stuff you looked at where you guys could have disrupted a little bit more or just everything short?
Yeah, I think it was, I've kind of been in a part of games like that in the past where I feel like they were trying to take the defensive line out of the game. And everything was a bubble, everything was an RPO, everything was a quick release hitch, a quick release flat, a quick release bubble. And I felt like when they tried to throw the ball down the field, that's when we had more success. There was the one time we lost contain, quarterback scrambled, and the guy worked the route back up the sideline. I think they hit like a 21-yard gain on that. Down the stretch in the red zone, they tried to take a couple shots at the end zone, and then the one series, I think it was like a 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, we got the sack strip, and they tried to drop back pass. But I felt like everything was just quick, easy completions, RPOs when they had access, and when they didn't have the access, they were handing the ball off or going quarterback run. So I think that's why we saw the high completion percentage, and I think our guys did a really good job of swarming and playing fast to kind of keep those from being, more explosive plays.
Corey said Armando Blunt should be back for this week against USF. So he played, I think like 25 or so snaps against Notre Dame. Just what have you seen from him? Obviously, he's still really young for a college player. We don't know the sophomore. Just what have you seen from him?
Yeah, he's, you want to talk about like how physical he is. He's detailed. He does his job every single play. He's a guy that has a major role in our defense at multiple positions. He can play outside, he can play inside, packages. He's a guy that, he's a major contributor for what we do and kind of how we're built. And, we're looking forward to having him back this week.
And then Ruben's had 2 stellar games to start the year. I mean, came in here, started coaching in back in the spring. What was maybe something that, I don't know, surprised for everyone? What stood out about his mentality and his work just since he got here?
Yeah, I just think it's his drive, his work ethic, how he goes about his process. And it's, to me, it's no surprise how he's playing on Saturdays or on the weekends because of how he goes about his weekly process. And, he's a guy that, he runs to the ball every play. He's, physical at the point of attack every single play. He's constantly working on his technique. He's constantly working on his pad level, constantly getting better with his hands. And, those are the things that show up on game day. And that's because it's, the result of what he does Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all week long. And I feel like, the days where maybe something didn't go his way in practice, he's the first guy when you look off the field, post-practice, he's working on whatever it was that he had to fix that day. And I think that's, why he's had the success he's had so far this season.
Bryce Fitzgerald, obviously he had the pick, but outside of that, how do you feel like he performed? And a young player like that, what does he need to show for you to be comfortable putting more on his plate?
Yeah, I thought that what excited me the most about that play is it's almost the same exact as the Notre Dame run. We got Notre Dame 3rd and 7. We have a similar call. Quarterback pushes the pocket. We come out of coverage. They throw a touchdown pass. And this week, very similar situation comes up. And now we push the coverage, and now he's there to make a pick in the back of the end zone. And that's someone that can see it on the film, get the rep, and now it happens in a game. and now it's fixed. And, that I thought was just a big play in that game, keep them off the scoreboard, but also it's something that hurt us week 1, and now week 2 we can erase the points where, in that week 1 scenario, we're hoping to hold them to 3. We come out of coverage, we lose contain, they turn into a 4-point play there, and now, for us, now we can completely erase the points by getting a takeaway there, rather than holding to a field goal. And I think that's just, being able to take it from the film room, being able to learn it, see it one time, and then go do it on game day, I think is huge.
And Keontae Scott and the Nichols, how would you evaluate him through the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, I thought, game 1 to game 2, talking about a guy that used his hands better, set the edge better, played a little bit faster. We saw a lot of FIB again, trying to get our guys, trying to get him back in the box. We've done some different things versus those looks, and I thought he's a guy that came down, fit the run very well. I thought he blitzed a little bit better this week, and I thought he made the available play. His tackling on some of the screens and some of the open field stuff, I thought he played very fast this week, and we put him in a lot of different situations, whether it was the coverage or what we were doing in the box, and I think he continues to work at it, get better every single week.
Corey, how do you guys plan on simulating the best you can with what Byram can do in the run game as a quarterback, kind of with what you guys have on your roster, maybe to give you guys a good look or as good a look as possible?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things they do that are challenging. I think they do a great job on the offensive side of the ball, and I think that's where the practice style this week will be very different than what it was last week. Using different personnel, using maybe different position players at certain positions to get a look for the speed and the tempo of how fast it's going to be and the style of players that they have in those different position groups. But obviously the quarterback position, we'll have different guys giving us a look there, and then with the tempo piece, we're going to do a lot of different things to crank up the speed practice this week.
The tempo, does that put a lot of stress communication-wise on the secondary? And how do you feel like that's been in the first 2 games so far?
Yeah, that's been a major thing since spring. It's been how do we handle tempo, how do we communicate it, how do the guys communicate the call, and how urgent are we to get aligned as a defense and get our eyes in the right spot, and make sure we're making the correct calls and communicating the right way. And that's something that we've had all the way through camp, is trying to go as fast as we possibly can. And now it'll be, we have to make sure we get aligned. We're urgent to get aligned, because you can see like there's certain plays in the game where they have the second call in the huddle already, but the play ends and they're sprinting to where their next alignment is, and they're running the next play. And they do a really good job of going fast and put pressure on the defense. You could see it this past week. I thought in the Boise game, I thought that kind of wore on them there late in the third quarter, and the same thing with Florida this past week. And I think that's something that we have to do a great job in practice. But it's been an emphasis piece since really since the spring.